Hello and welcome back to Guided Souls. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm so excited to be back here for another week with you guys. If you prefer to watch instead of listen, you can head on over to my YouTube channel at Guided Soul Crystals, and you can find me on all the socials at Guided Soul Crystals. Today's topic is one that is really special and also timely for me, and I'm hoping that it's also going to help a lot of other people because I know it's definitely a tough thing when it comes to going through a spiritual awakening, but also just going through life. And I've titled the episode Stand Still, and you'll see why in a few minutes. But really, what it is a response to what to do when you're feeling lost. I know so many of us feel lost many times on our spiritual journeys. Maybe it feels like most of the time you feel lost, or maybe feeling lost is what started your spiritual awakening in the first place. So, whatever it is, whatever stage you're in, I know that feeling lost is definitely a thing that all humans experience, and especially on your spiritual journey. But there's a lot of beauty in the struggle of feeling lost and the outcomes that come from us leaning into that feeling instead of fighting it. So that is what we are going to talk about today. And I'm going to center our discussion around an interview video that I saw. And in the interview, they're talking about a specific poem. So I happened to come across this viral video on TikTok, but I'm sure you could find this interview just by Googling on YouTube as well if you don't have a TikTok. But it's an interview with David White, Whyte, and he is reading and discussing the poem Lost by David Wagner. If you are on TikTok and you want to find the video, it's by an account called Law of Being, and it was posted on May 10th. But if you don't have TikTok or you just don't want to, scroll and try and find it, you could also just Google David Whyte interview lost poem David Wagner, and I'm sure it'll pop up. So the way that they edited the TikTok video that I watched, I felt was incredibly powerful. Again, it's David Whyte talking about the poem, reading the poem, and sort of dissecting what it means. And it had a really profound impact on me. I saved it. I've listened to it many times. I think I also reposted it. And it just felt really pertinent to what I have been going through and experiencing. And with turning 30, I had a wonderful, incredible birthday. I had an incredible birthday trip. I felt so loved, so special. But at the same time, it was kind of a catalyst for being thrown into an abyss of feeling lost. And I kind of had a sense that this was happening or that this was coming. I do pull tarot cards for myself quite often. And if you are learning tarot, or even if you're seasoned in tarot, I have found that asking very specific questions like, what will happen if I do this, can be super helpful in terms of gaining clarity. But you have to be okay with whatever the cards tell you. And so I had been kind of asking those types of questions, and no matter how I sliced it, I was always coming up with like the Tower card, which, if you don't know what the Tower card symbolizes or what a Tower moment is, it's basically just like something in your life, or sometimes your entire life, just crumbling to pieces. It feels like the rug got pulled out from under you. It's usually not a pleasant feeling, but the reason that these tower moments happen is always for your greater good, and it's always removing something to make space for something else or to have you see clearly or something like that. So they are typically painful, they're not very fun, but they are also incredibly important when it comes to your growth, both spiritually, just as a human, and evolving throughout your life. So no matter how I sliced it, I kept on getting this Tower card and Nine of Swords, which is like having nightmares or worrying, and Ten of Wands, which is like being burnt out. And so I was like, okay, something is coming. I don't know what it is, but something is coming. And I just hope that I have the strength to just lean into it instead of trying to push it away. And sure enough, as soon as I got back from my trip and kind of started back into the groove of things, I just felt so lost. I felt like I was spinning my wheels, like nothing that I was doing felt right or was giving me the types of results that I was looking for. And I didn't understand why things that previously felt so right and like the right direction suddenly felt like the totally wrong direction. And like I just had no idea what I was doing. And I've since gained a little bit of clarity, and I'll share some of that later in the podcast. But before I go any further, I just want to read a transcript of this interview and this poem to you to give us a little bit more context on what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the episode. So, this is a transcript of the video that I saw, and I will let you know when it goes into the poem that he's talking about. But this is David White's interview. He says, how do you know you're on your path? Because it disappears. That's how you know. How do you know you're really doing something radical? Because you can't see where you're going. That's how you know. But everything you lent your identity on has gone, and so you are going to enter the black contemplative splendors of self-doubt at the same time as you're setting out on this radical new path. And then he goes into reading the poem. The context for the poem is an elder talking to a child who is lost in the forest. And the way that he says it is not word for word. He repeats some things for emphasis, but I do think that the way that he read it was really beautiful. So that is how I'm going to read it as well. So this is the poem. And what am I going to do? I'm lost in the forest. The elder says, stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Stand still. What do I do when I'm lost in the forest? Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. Listen. The forest breathes. It whispers. I have made this place around you. If you leave, you may come back again, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a branch does is lost on you, then you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. The forest knows where you are. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. You must let it find you. And then he goes back to discussing the poem with the person that's interviewing him. And he says, see, what's astonishing about that poem is you can see there are three things about this poem that are absolutely clear. First of all, the elder says, you cannot sleepwalk your way into your destiny. You must wake up and pay attention. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. You must pay attention. That means paying attention to the shadow side, the shadows of your existence too. You must pay attention to everything you've given away in order to make yourself safe in your position at work. All the games you play in order to remain safe and untouched, as well as your creative gifts too. You must pay attention to those also. The second stage in this teaching is this incredible feeling of silence, that unless you have silence in your life and you feel the silence in the poem, it says, if you leave, you may come back here again. Saying here, no two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or branch does is lost on you, then surely you are lost. You feel the silence there. You're almost under that cedar canopy there. And I think that the elder is saying that if you pay real attention, unless you have silence and the ability for silence in your body to do that, then you will get too frightened because all the voices inside you will drown out any real change.
You have 100 reasons not to make any real change, and you've got all the voices and all the reasons not to do it. And so the ability for profound silence is being called on here. And then that attention can flower into something else. Because if you do feel grief about your workplace, you really don't know what's underneath that grief until you fall into it. Number 3, and this amazing last line, the forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. This is astonishing because in the Zen tradition, they say if you go out and confirm the 10,000 things, this is delusion. If the 10,000 things come and confirm you, this is enlightenment. The elders in the Northwest were saying the same thing. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. And this poem, this interview that he gave just had such a profound impact on me. I think particularly the last 2 stages that he talks about. So I'm going to talk about all 3, the you must pay attention, you must have silence, and you must stand still, because I do think that all of them are important. But I do think that the last 2, and particularly the last 1, is much more difficult than we may think that it is, and it's counterintuitive a lot of times as well. So the first thing, you must pay attention. If you are listening to this podcast, whether this is your first time listening or you listen to it every week for a long time, you are paying attention. There is something in you that wants to wake up, wants to pay attention. You're not listening to this by accident. You actively chose to listen to something that was going to challenge your brain, awaken your spirit, and help you to open your eyes to the world around you. So congratulations, you are already on this path to paying attention. In addition to that, maybe you start to explore more about what spirituality means to you, because it may mean something totally different to you than it does to me. But maybe you start to open your eyes to the signs and signals that maybe your past loved ones are sending you, or your spirit team, your spirit guides, if you believe in that type of support from the other side, which I do. Maybe you start to hear songs and recognize that there's a message in those songs for you, or see an angel number and be comforted that your past loved one is with you. Those are all forms of paying attention. But even more than that, maybe you are starting to pay attention to your own intuition. Those little gnawing feelings that say, hey, I don't know if this relationship is for me anymore. Or maybe this work path, this workplace, this career path is no longer serving me, and it's time for me to explore something different. Or maybe something as simple as, I'm curious about this thing called spirituality, and so I'm going to explore deeper. That is also listening to your intuition. And 2 of the specific kind of pay attentions that David White mentions as he's speaking in this interview is paying attention to your shadow self as well as your creative gifts. And paying attention to your shadow self is really difficult, but also, again, really healing when you approach it from a place of curiosity and self-love and self-acceptance, and not self-criticism, hopefully not ever self-hatred, but just the intention of looking at your shadow self is never to beat yourself up. It's always to hopefully give yourself grace, heal, be curious. And when you do it that way, it is such a beautifully transformative practice. What I mean by shadow self, because I know there's probably a lot of definitions out there. First, it's identifying the things in your life that you're doing or participating in, or situations that you're, keeping yourself in that aren't serving you or don't feel authentic to who you are, but you're not really sure why you're doing it. I used to have a really bad and short temper. It didn't take much to kind of send me over the edge, particularly with the people that I cared about most, which is definitely not the person that I wanted to be, not the life that I wanted to live. And it took some really tough introspection to kind of uncover what was at the core of that. And really, behind all anger is fear and hurt. And I was so scared and I was so hurt. And until I addressed those things, there was no way that I was going to be able to become a less reactive person, become a less angry person. Even though I had a short fuse, like I was an angry person in general, I was mad at the world. The world was taking my favorite person from me, and I was really afraid and I was really hurt. And that definitely played itself out in my life. But even after my dad was gone, this was still something that I struggled with. So that took a lot of looking at my shadow self, waking up to that and realizing, hey, this is not actually how I want to live my life. So I am going to work on this wound to heal it and move forward. There is nothing wrong with your shadow self. There is nothing shameful about your shadow self. You have developed these behaviors, these beliefs because of very valid things that you have gone through. And there is no sense in beating yourself up about it. It's just about understanding it and allowing yourself to heal so that you no longer have to keep yourself in these games. And, one of the things that David White specifically alludes to is, what games are you playing to keep yourself safe and untouched at work? And I think there's a lot of people that will do that a lot. They will give up pieces of themselves in order to feel safe and stable at work. And I 100% wholeheartedly understand that. I have been there. And to a certain extent, I'm still doing that. Like, there are still pieces of me that I have not fully accepted or shown or expressed through my work for fear of judgment and just wanting to stay safe and to stay untouched, to use his words. So, even though I am following and pursuing my dreams, I still have a lot of work to do there. And then the more fun side of that is also paying attention to your creative gifts. And I think that goes back to one of the past episodes that I did about finding your path and recognizing, what am I oddly good at and what lights me up, and finding the intersection of those two things. So you're already paying attention, but maybe you want to pay attention a little bit more and pay attention on a little bit of a deeper level moving forward. But the second and third ones are a little bit, I'd say, advanced in terms of how to implement these things. So you must have silence. This is something that I go in and out of being good at. And like he says, there's no point in paying attention and recognizing the things that you really want to change if you're not going to allow yourself the space and the silence to do those things, because we have so much going on in our brains that isn't even ours. I think especially with the wonderful technology that we have, I'm so grateful that I have the ability to send out messages over social media and record this podcast, and it can be in this, handheld phone, and you can wear wireless headphones and walk around or maybe listen to it in your car. It's just like, it is a really beautiful thing to have this technology. On the other hand, it makes it so that if we want to, we never actually have to have an original thought throughout our entire day or a thought that's just our own. I have definitely been guilty of going from, okay, I'm going from TikTok and then I'm looking at Instagram and then I'm not looking at the screen, but I'm listening to a podcast while I do the dishes or put away laundry. And then I'm watching the TV and then I'm, talking to someone on the phone or texting someone. It's like just constantly feeding my brain with other people's thoughts and opinions and worries and fears, and it makes it so that it just drowns out what you even wanted to change and work on in the first place. But to cultivate that kind of silence, to have the discipline to allow that kind of silence in, is a lot easier said than done. And again, I go through times where it feels more natural than others, but I found myself in this past week realizing I am doing everything to numb the silence, to not have that silence. There's not a minute of my day that I'm not filling with some type of media or content or something, to the point where it's like, just how do I expect any sort of breakthrough or clarity to come through when I never just allow my mind to be? And so I have really, really tried these past few days to be on my phone as little as possible, to not have anything, even music in my ear as I'm cleaning the house or doing things around the house or walking the dogs, just allowing myself to be in the silence, going outside, working with crystals in the silence, just meditating, looking at the stars in silence. And for the first day, it was so hard, and I kept reaching for my phone and I kept, wanting to fill the time and the silence with some sort of noise. But as I've gotten further away from it, it's still not instinctual. It's still work, but I'm feeling less frantic, less busy-minded, less like there is just so much happening in my brain that there's not space for anything else. I'm slowly letting other people's thoughts dissipate away and allowing my thoughts to grow bigger. And something that it's maybe a tiny bit unique to my situation, but I think it's something that everyone can probably relate to, is searching for external validation to let you know whether what you're doing is right or not. And so a lot of times in terms of my content, I will consider myself on the right path if the content that I am putting out there is being responded to well. So if I'm getting a lot of views, a lot of likes, if people are, in the comments thanking me for whatever, I'm like, okay, yes, this is what I meant to do. And I just realized that's such a false measure of how I want to go about things. I want to be my first audience. I want to make what is interesting to me, what is helpful to me, what is powerful to me. And then if it resonates with other people, that's amazing. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's okay. And I also realized I'm just in such a content mindset constantly that I rarely just do anything magical for myself anymore. It's like, I'm doing all these things like, getting sun water on Letha and moon water with the full moon. But like half the reason I'm doing it is to document it for content. And that just takes away so much magic from it. And I'm not saying that you can't ever do those things and make it into content, because that's part of my job. That's part of what I do. But I realized I just was putting such a heavy emphasis on, do other people like this? What do other people think? That I could not have an original thought of my own. And so I'm taking a step back from social media for the next little bit, maybe just like a week or so. Nothing too intense, maybe longer. I never know. But just to lean into the silence and what brings me to the final one, which is stand still. This is so hard for me, way more than the pay attention or even the you must have silence, because those are like actionable things I can do. The standing still is like almost having the courage not to do anything, which is so hard. But I love the last line: the forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. And to me, what that means is your destiny, your soul, your path knows exactly where you are. Just let it find you. I'm always trying to search and discover and find out and figure out and push. And a lot of times it feels like if I'm not doing that, I'm not working hard enough, I'm failing, I'm letting myself down, I'm letting my family down, not recognizing that if I just took a moment, a beat to stand still, to pay attention, to be in the silence, that all of the answers that I need would come to me. But that requires a certain level of faith and trust in yourself and in the universe that you will be provided those answers in order to do that in the first place. I think back to how I even got started into, posting about spirituality and readings was because I finally realized that the nonprofit that I was so passionate about, that I was trying so hard to get off the ground, was not working for some reason, and I needed to take a pause on it, and I had no idea what was going to come next. And so I just stood still, and it was excruciating, but it led me to such a beautiful path. And so I really feel like there are these moments when we feel so lost, and the thing that feels the most natural to us is to try to figure it out, try to push, try to grab, try to, work harder in order to find ourselves and get to where we want to be, not realizing that if we just had the courage to stand still, that it would find us. I think the beautiful thing about it is when you are standing still, when you are allowing the silence to be around you, when you are paying attention, is when those beautiful revelations come in. And sometimes they are different than anything you ever could have imagined or conceived of. And you never would have thought of it if you hadn't allowed it to just come to you. I truly never would have chosen this path for myself, but the universe knew. I didn't know. The universe knew. And it took me standing still in order for it to find me. And then I acted on it, but I had to stand still before it came to me. And so I don't know why I'm being called to stand still at this moment. I think it's especially hard because I felt so good and like I was just moving forward and everything was finally going in the right direction and I could stop panicking. And then all of a sudden it was like someone like put up a stop sign in front of me and was like, whoa, 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 you have to take a break and recalibrate, or else this is not going to end well or go in the direction that it's meant to go in, and we will keep stopping you until you stand still. That's the other thing, is you will just keep hitting brick wall after brick wall until you finally let go and stand still, and the answers will find you. And while you are standing still, it's a great time to pay attention and to allow the silence in and to just go wherever your intuition is telling you to go. Not your ego, not your logical mind, not what you think people are going to think about you or think is a cool thing to do, what your intuition is telling you. If your intuition is telling you to go lay in the grass and stare at the clouds for an hour, guess what? That is going to be the best thing that you can do for yourself, your life, and the people in it. And I know it feels counterintuitive because we have this idea of hustle, grind, go, and you see someone who should be doing all these things, but instead they're laying in the grass staring at the sky. But what you don't realize is that's actually the most important work that you could be doing right now. I don't know how long this is going to be for me. It might be a week. It might actually just be a couple days. It might be 2 weeks. It's not up to me. But all that I know right now is it's time to pay attention, have silence, and stand still. So I hope that you found this poem and this interview and my analysis of it helpful. Like I said, it's something that has been truly transformative for me and something that the universe is allowing me to put into practice at this time. That's the other thing is like sometimes you just have to see your struggle, your periods of struggle as such a beautiful gift because what's on the other side is always going to be more authentic to who you are than where you were before you started the struggle. And so I will be removing layers that I didn't know were there. I will be having realizations about myself that I didn't know existed. And hopefully, I will be gaining the courage to show those different sides of myself to the world when the time is right. I know I say this a lot, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Of all of my creations and content, this is definitely the one that is just like so authentic and special to me, and just me, bare bones, just bearing my soul. And so the fact that anyone listens to it is incredible and means so much to me. And the fact that there are a lot of you that listen to it also means so much to me. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to share some love with me, you can write a review or just tap those 5 stars. That works as well. Share it with a friend, make it your Instagram story, whatever feels right and comfortable to you would mean so much to me. And if you happen to be in the market for a crystal, you can go to guidedsoulcrystals.com. Follow me on all the socials, Guided Soul Crystals, and I'm also doing a free crystal giveaway on July 1st. So check out my pinned post on my Instagram if you want more information on that. Until next time, thank you so much for being here with me. Keep going. You are doing amazing, and I love you.